Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all this Monday evening. We are going to go ahead and jump in just for the sake of time. We're not going to do our table time, but we're going to go ahead and jump into our teaching. Excited to have someone that years ago, if we had MTI, may have been sitting in this room. So if you haven't met Pastor Lloyd Blank, he's one of our executive pastors. He oversees a ton, everything from teams, global, security, facilities. There's a wide variety, but had 17 years working at DuPont Chemical Plant in, was that Mississippi? Mississippi. But then felt a call to ministry as a church member, started serving in church, and he may tell more of a story, so I don't want to get into it, but he would have been doing what you guys are doing now. Hey, I work a normal 9 to 5, but I'm feeling a call to ministry, and then he's been serving in church ministry for how long now? 20 years. So excited to have him teaching as we look in leadership. You know, we looked at leading self, leading families, and now we're looking at how to lead in the community. So that's part of what Pastor Lloyd's doing. So I just want to pray for you, and then we're going to pass it over to Lloyd. Okay, so we pray together. God, thank you for our time together tonight. Thank you for just, God, how you're working in our church. And I just pray that you work the same way in our hearts. And just let us love you more than ministry. Let us love you more than the things that we get to do. So, God, help us just develop a heart that longs after you. And so as we look today at leading the community, God, give us eyes to see people. Give us eyes to meet needs. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So, hey, can you help me welcome Pastor Lloyd?
So, thank you guys so much. Y'all were so kind. You were so kind. So, appreciate you guys being here. As Pastor Matt said, this group like this holds a special place in my heart. It was when in my 20s when I was already in the workforce, much like many of you working a regular job, that God called me to the ministry. It was a moment when I knew, it was very crystal clear. I shared this with somebody just yesterday after the 2 o'clock service, about a moment in time when God made it crystal clear that he had placed a call of ministry on my life. Now, I'd like to tell you that my wife and I prayed about it, and I went off to seminary and went to school, or went and jumped into a class like this and became a pastor. But I was disobedient for a long time. I just want to tell you, so I wish it would have been something for me to step into, but at the time it wasn't available to me, and I was disobedient for a season and continued my job and just kept serving the Lord, and then God opened up the door several years later through me just faithfully serving the church. It was just because I just gotten involved and just kept serving, like many of you that I see on a regular basis, either on this campus or other campuses, where I was just faithfully serving in ministry. And then God opened up the door, allowed me to be on full-time church staff, which was 20 years ago this year, actually. So it's been an amazing journey. But I am from Mississippi. Is there anybody in here from Mississippi? Because you can probably tell I'm not from Texas. Did anybody already tell I'm not from Texas? Okay, there's nobody in here from Mississippi? Okay, good. Okay, that's good. So the best part about being from Mississippi? The from part. Yeah, because I go back and tell people all the time, like, you realize you don't have to live here. Like, there's other places, really. I mean, I lived there for 35 years of my life, and never met anybody that moved to Mississippi. Okay, so when I got out, it was like, okay, blessings to you guys, and I'm going on, and I found Texas, and it's been great. We've been in Texas a little over 10 years, been at CBC for 4.5. And came here, part of the global team, and a couple of years ago moved to executive team. And I won't bore you with the details of what I get to do on a regular basis, but it is just a joy and an honor to be able to serve the Lord here at CBC and to be a part of what you guys are doing here as part of MTI. So I'm going to teach you tonight a little bit about servant leadership. Before we get started, though, somebody tell me the definition of what you think the definition of leadership is. Influence. We could stop right there because we won't get to a better answer than influence. The definition of leadership is influence. It truly is being able to influence. And John Maxwell said it like this, and I love this quote from John Maxwell. It said, leadership is influence, the ability to influence someone to do something, even something they would not do. That's what leadership is. And whether you believe it or not, every one of you in this room have influence. Regardless of what you find yourself doing on a daily basis, everybody has influence. So by definition, if you have influence, then you're a leader. You're leading in some way. And I often like to tell people, hey, don't ever underestimate the power of influence. You have influence. It's what you do with it is what's going to really make a difference. Is the influence that you have. You have people around you whether they're coworkers, family members, whether they're neighbors, you have people under your influence. And Maxwell said, hey, that's what leadership is about. The ability to influence people to do something, even things they wouldn't normally do. But there's a better definition of leadership. And J. Oswald Sanders, who was a great missionary and author, he defined leadership as this: true leadership is achieved not by reducing men to one's service, but in giving oneself in selfless service to them. So while Maxwell is really, really good and has wrote a ton of leadership books, I really like what Oswald Sanders had to say. True leadership is achieved not by reducing ourselves to serve somebody, but in giving oneself in a selfless service to them. So as we think about leadership, and that's just a good starting point for us, as I was preparing what I was going to teach and share with you guys, I looked on my shelf to see the countless books that I have, and I was like, okay, is there something I could pull off to be a good reference? And then I thought about how much time I was going to have, and I literally counted 17 different leadership books in my office. And I don't say that to brag, because I'm not going to tell you that I've read all 17 of them, okay? But there are good resources. And in no way could I teach in about a 50-minute window even a small portion of those books. So you're going to get a little bit of snippets from different things. But there's a lot of people who have a lot of things to say about leadership. There's a lot of people who have a lot of things to say about how we should lead. But we're not just talking about leadership tonight, because I don't want to just give you a talk on leadership and help you to be a better leader. What I want to talk to you tonight about the importance of being a servant, because there's a difference. And I hope you'll be able to see that just interwoven between through what I talk about. But anybody in here like Chick-fil-A? You can be honest. Be honest. Come on. Surely there's more than 3 or 4 people like Chick-fil-A, okay? Yeah, that's right. So it's the Lord's chicken, right? So if you're going to go eat, you might as well eat the Lord's chicken. All right, Chick-fil-A is really, really good at a lot of things, but it's not necessarily a chicken, let's be honest. I mean, if you really want to be honest about it, Chick-fil-A chicken is just good chicken. Anybody think that it's great chicken? It's just good. But we go often. Matter of fact, I go pretty regular. It's the number 1 visited single restaurant that I go to is Chick-fil-A. But it's just good chicken. So why do we go to, besides the fact that it's the Lord's chicken, but why do we go to Chick-fil-A? Because of their service. Because it's consistent. Because we know what we're going to get. And it's not because the food is so good. It's a chicken sandwich with a pickle. I mean, think about that for just a minute. I mean, who goes to a burger place and says, just give me a burger with nothing on it? But we'll go to a place consistently over and over and over again and get a chicken sandwich with just the pickle. And then I do the thing that some people think is going to be the worst, and that is I have them hold the pickle. So it's just it's like sandwich. It's just bread and a chicken fillet. And we call that good food. But that's not why I go. Because every time I go, I'm going to be greeted kindly, okay? The service is going to be exceptional in a lot of ways, and the sandwich is going to be the same every time. But what made Chick-fil-A was so good was how they got people that worked there to understand the importance of service. And it started really, really early because Truett Cathy, if you know the story of Chick-fil-A, never intended to have thousands, and they have 3,300 Chick-fil-A restaurants across the country. That was never his goal. There was people around him one day in a board meeting talking about how they needed to grow the business. And Truett Cathy didn't come up with a really good business plan to grow the business. He said, we don't need to get bigger. We need to get better. The story says that to the point he stood up in the room and pounded his fist on the table and said, if we get better, our customers will demand that we get bigger. And that's where the service of Chick-fil-A got started, because he wasn't out to build a bigger franchise. He was out to build a better franchise. And that's where they began to really teach people that work there the importance of service. If we serve people and create a great experience, people will keep coming back. And it never was intended for people at Chick-fil-A to say, it's my pleasure, but it became part of the DNA of who they were, is trying to be the very best in delivering a quality chicken sandwich. And that's what they did. And I would say they were pretty successful at it. Okay, that's where they are. That's why they're so big and so popular where they are today. But as we think about servant leadership, and we think about service, and we think about serving others, there's a verse that comes to mind that points us to the fact that Jesus himself modeled exactly what we should be about, and that's found in Matthew 20:28. And it says, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. And I think I have a slide for that. Yeah, so Matthew 28 says, so Jesus said, for the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. So when we think about servant leadership, we think about great leaders. And if I went around the room and asked you, hey, who are some great leaders in the Bible? And I've done this many times. Jesus is always at the top of the list. So I could ask the question, but I know the answer that we would already get, that it would be Jesus. So we would already agree on that. Because in case you didn't know this already, when somebody asks you a question at church, the number one answer is always Jesus, okay? So you can just go there. It doesn't matter what the question is, you can always just say Jesus. So we think about leaders, we think about, Jesus definitely was a great leader, but the reason Jesus was a great leader was because Jesus was a great servant. Jesus didn't come to be served, he came to serve all the way to the point of death, laying his life down for us. So that just means Jesus was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for everybody. And when you think about servant leadership, what is it about? It's about willing to make a sacrifice. Okay? Now I'm going to guess that most of you in this room are already serving somewhere. Okay? So I'm not going to embarrass somebody and say, hey, raise your hand and tell me where. Well, I will say this. Somebody go ahead and raise your hand and tell me where you're serving. I won't call on everybody. But all right, Brad, tell me where you're serving. Prayer team. Okay? Somebody else. Host lounge. Prayer team. Okay, and we could go around, and there's a lot of people that's already serving, okay? So when you're serving, hey, a lot of times it's praying for somebody, it's hosting a space, it's holding a door. But what we need to see is when we do that, the idea of serving is just saying, hey, I'm willing to put the needs of somebody else ahead of mine. That's what serving is, okay? So when you think about leadership as influence, serving is just saying, hey, I'm just going to put the needs of others before mine. And we want to marry those two together. And the reason we want to do that is found right here in Matthew 20:28, where Jesus says, I didn't come to be served, I came to serve. Servant leaders are leaders who serve. Servant leaders are leaders who serve. 1 Peter 4:10 says this, as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. Now, we've heard Pastor Ed before, if you've been to Equip already, talk about gifts, and hopefully you've already done a spiritual gift inventory, and you kind of know that. Has everybody been to Equip? As a guy who's over teams in Equip, I would hope that everybody's in here has been through Equip. Okay, so how many of you guys discovered something new about yourself perhaps when you took the spiritual gift inventory? Maybe you discovered a gifting that you had that you're like, wow, I didn't realize that maybe that was a spiritual gift. Or, hey, I knew that was interested in something, or something we kind of, had drawn me in that direction, but had no idea. That's one of the reasons why we do a spiritual gift inventory. But as each has received a gift, your spiritual gifting, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. So God created you with a gift. And what we want to do is be able to make sure, hey, you can understand that, you discover that. And the best thing we can do is to serve in the gifting that God created us for, okay? It's said that, one of the best days, two of the best days of people's lives, the day they were born and the day they were discovered why they were born, okay? So that's why it's important to understand, we talk about as each has received a gift, that's that moment where the light comes on and you go, this makes so much sense. Now, I already shared, and Pastor Matt shared a little bit, for 18 years I worked in quality control at a chemical plant, okay? It was a great career that I absolutely hated. I'm I'm just going to tell you, okay? The crazy thing is I actually hated chemistry so bad in school, and I ended up working in a laboratory at a chemical plant. I literally cheated my way through chemistry just to pass, thinking I will never, ever, ever use this again. And what it God do was place me right in a place right there to be able to do stuff I was surely shouldn't have been doing. But I share that with you is the reason why I was so miserable because I was not doing what God had created me to do. The giftings that he had, while it did make, it was a part of who I was and how he created me, while it did make me successful, it didn't fulfill me. Okay, does that make sense to anybody in here? I was able to be successful in a career and do well from the world standards, if you will, climbing the corporate ladder and doing those things. But every day when I went home, I did not feel like I was fulfilled in what God had created me to do. Then came along that moment in time when God said, yeah, but I've got something else for you to do. And you know what? Then every day when I got home, I had an even more sick feeling. Okay, because I knew then God had created me for something more. Now, you may be in this room thinking, yeah, but I'm right at the job where I'm supposed to be, and I don't leave feeling that way. And I would just tell you, not everybody's called to vocational ministry, but everybody's called to ministry. Okay, every one of you have a calling on your life if you said yes to Jesus to ministry. Now, this class hopefully will prepare many of you for vocational ministry. But you may be right where you are thinking, God has placed me here and it's the most amazing thing. And if that's you, praise God and keep being the light. Because Matthew 5:16 tells us to be the light, okay? So let your light shine that people will see your good deeds and glorify your Savior in heaven, okay? So that verse tells us we got good things to be doing. People's watching, so if you do it well, people are going to see Jesus. And that may be exactly where you're at working. But for me, when I realized I had a gift, God was calling me to something and I wasn't fulfilling that, it became an empty spot for me. And what I needed to learn was, hey, what is God doing and how can I better serve not just him but the people around me? So as we think about servant leaders or leaders that serve, I want to just take you through this acronym. The first one starts with an S. When we think about serving, servant leaders see what others don't see. Now, just quickly, somebody tell me what you think that means. When is a time when maybe you saw something that other people didn't see? Okay, yeah, there we go. We see other people's moods. Maybe it's a situation with a coworker or something like that, and you could sense something is not right there. Okay, yeah, that's very good. Somebody else got an idea? Problem situations. Yeah, okay. Potential. Great, all great answers. Servant leaders, when we talk about seeing what other people don't see, sometimes people walk right by somebody who is certainly hurting, struggling, needs just a word of encouragement, okay? So when you think about how we just interact with people, when we see what others don't see, now, you're a lot like me, I'm sure at times. You're busy, you're preoccupied. Man, the enemy has made his way in there, got you distracted to something else, and what happens? We will blow right by somebody that God already ordained a moment for us to spend time with, okay, and we miss it, okay? But servant leaders see what others don't see. We see those people, okay? So what we have to do is we have to slow down and make sure that we don't get distracted. But it's not just seeing people. Sometimes it's just seeing opportunities. Sometimes it's been able to assess a situation and say, hey, something's off here. Sometimes it's something physically that needs to be done. Okay, so I was tempted to do something tonight, but I was like, no, I don't want to do that and put people on the spot because you didn't know who you were. But I was tempted to just leave trash all over the room. You ever been walked in someplace and like, somebody should have picked that up? And what happens is 12 people walk by it and nobody picked it up, okay? But what do servant leaders do when you see something that's out of place or you see something you can step into, make it better? That's what servant leaders do. Is they see what others don't see and they're willing to step into those situations. And sometimes it's the person on the corner holding the sign. Okay, let's just be real because we see that often. It's taking time for those type people, or sometimes it's just stepping into what can be a challenging, difficult situation. Is just having an awareness. That's what servant leaders do. But servant leaders don't just see what other people they don't see what others don't see. Servant leaders envision a better tomorrow. Servant leaders envision a better tomorrow, which just simply means this: just because it is that way today doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Okay? Servant leaders are looking forward. Servant leaders are visionaries, okay? They're looking at what could be, not how it is now. A lot of people will complain about their current situation, okay? Don't point to somebody that you know is maybe sitting close by that does that, okay? But some people their woe is me, and they can never seem to get ahead, and they are always complaining, okay? But that's not what God has called us to, okay? Because if you're in this room, you know, hey, there is something better coming. I was sitting next to Pastor Ed yesterday, and he's got a new tattoo. I know that's probably surprising to anybody in this room, okay? But so the next time you see him, just look close, because he just got a very unusual tattoo put right here on his arm. It's a fork. He put a fork right here, okay? Because when the server comes to clear the table, you want to hold on to the fork, because what comes after dinner? Dessert. Okay, because the fork means the best is yet to come. And he showed that to me yesterday, and I had seen it for the first time, and I leaned over and I said, the best is yet to come. And he said, oh, yes, it is. Pastor friend of mine years ago, sweet man, first church I got to served under one of the kindest, gentlest pastors ever. His name was Bill Barton. He was 83 years old. Okay, now I'll just tell you, I was not excited to go to a church as my first suited pastor position to serve with an 80-year-old pastor, okay? I was wanting to go somewhere like serve with somebody like Pastor Ed, who was going to be hip and cool, and we were going to do the stuff together, and I served with Bill Barton, who is 83 years old. Now, I love Pastor Ed, and we've been friends for a long time, but I learned so much about pastoring people. But I share that with you is because Pastor Bill told me, said, when I die, you make sure you put a fork in my casket. He said, because I want everybody to know that the best is yet to come. So when I saw that fork yesterday, I didn't know what Pastor Ed had got that fork for, but I knew what Pastor Bill had taught me a long time ago. And that's exactly, so it was a cool moment yesterday. That's what servant leaders do. They envision a better tomorrow. They believe that the best is yet to come, okay? And a lot of times that starts by believing the best in other people, okay? Just because it is that way today doesn't mean it has to be that way tomorrow. So servant leaders are always believing there's something better to come. Servant leaders run to what other people run from. They run to what other people run from. Any first responders in the room? Okay, I got a few in here, okay? The first responders get this because they live this on a daily basis. Or if you're military or have a military background, you get this as well, because that's what first responders and military do. They run to what other people run from. It's a firefighter who will run into a building to get people out when the other people are running out for their safety, to keep the building from falling on them, of course. But servant leaders run to what other people run from, because servant leaders are willing to do the hard. That's what that means. Is when I'm going to run to the hard things and help with the hard when other people are trying to get out of the way because things got too hard. It's certainly that mentality of that first responder that says, I'm going to go to the things that most people don't want to do. I'm going to volunteer for the things that most people wouldn't volunteer for. Okay, anybody here work in the parking lot? Shane, I saw you think about raising your hand over there, but that's okay. I'm not judging anybody in here. It's okay. It's a judge-free zone, okay? But I just tell you, there's a special place in my heart for people who work in the parking lot, okay? So if you've been at CBC for more than a year, you know how much we love the people who serve in the parking lot. The reason why is a year ago, it took about an hour to get out of our parking lot, and I timed it yesterday, and most people got out in about 15 or 20 minutes, okay? So now, the reason why I love those guys, and every Sunday I'm going to go by and see those guys every Sunday. So some of you guys are on the prayer team, and you're like the air conditioning, and you're passing out coffee, and that's great. God's called you to that. You're doing what you were gifted and wired to do. That's okay. Not judging you. I just say I go see those guys because you know what I look at when I see those guys? Is this right here. Because you know how many people really want to go serve in the parking lot because they're just so excited to stand out there in the pouring rain or the freezing cold, or, oh yeah, by the way, for the 12 months out of the year where it feels like it's 110 degrees in San Antonio. Yeah, those guys will be out there and those ladies will be out there serving. Because servant leaders, that's just a good example, one of many, many good examples. But servant leaders run to what other people run from. And and it's so interesting to see because most people get out of their car and they're trying as quickly as they can when it's 100 degrees or pouring rain to do what? They're running from their car to inside. And these people are running from inside out to help them get out of their car. So that's what servant leaders do. They run to what other people run from. They're not afraid of the hard. Servant leaders have a vibrant attitude. They have a vibrant attitude. All right? Anybody work with somebody that has a really bad attitude? Am I the only person raising my hand? You say, well, Pastor, well, you work at staff at a church. Okay, I'll raise two hands. So vibrant attitude, okay? Attitude determines altitude, okay? You can't fly like an eagle if your attitude smells like a buzzard, okay? So you should have a vibrant attitude, which means you're uplifting those around you, okay? You're setting the tone for the conversation in your workspace. You have a vibrant attitude. People know based on how you carry yourself and the content of your conversation that there's something different about you. Servant leaders have a vibrant attitude. You're the kind of person that people want to be around, okay? And you know the people who don't have this kind of attitude because you don't want to be around them, okay? But servant leaders have a vibrant attitude. And then the last thing, servant leaders who serve, they exude passion. They exude passion, which means this. It doesn't take long for people to be around you to know what you're excited about, okay? So any football fans in the house? All right. Yeah, there's a few. All right, good. There's a few people. All right, that's good. Any Spurs fans in the house? Okay, got a few more. All right, that's good. It's good. All right. Any Cowboy fans in the house? Okay, this does not apply to you, okay? Well, you're passionate, or let me just say you're passionate for the wrong things. No, I'll just say, I'm a huge New Orleans Saints fan, okay? I grew up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and I love the New Orleans Saints. I've been to many, many games, and I'm telling you, I cried real tears when they won the Super Bowl, several years ago. But there's just something about it, and my wife has told many, many stories of many, many videos she has recorded of me. Because when people are around me watching a football game, they know how excited I get about, how passionate I am about the New Orleans Saints. Now, I'm trying to get a little more passionate about the Spurs, okay? I'll just tell you, I came to San Antonio, not a Spurs fan, but I think there's some potential here, okay? I think that they might be doing something. And I came from Dallas where I was a Mavericks fan. But now I'm a Wemby fan. So anyway, so when I go to a Spurs game, you know, it's pretty obvious. People know what team I'm pulling for, okay? When I'm in the Superdome watching the Saints play, it's pretty obvious. Now, my Cowboys and my lone Cowboy fan back there, I actually do pull for the Cowboys too, okay? I'm one of the few that actually like Dak Prescott. But the thing about it is when I show up, people know who I'm for. Servant leaderships exude passion because people know what you're for, what you're passionate about. What is God stirring in you? Okay, what's the overflow of what's going on in your heart? Scripture tells us that out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So what's on the inside should be coming to the outside. And servant leaders exude passion. They're excited about what God's doing. They're excited to be able to share stories. And you say, well, but Pastor Lloyd, I don't like to talk to people, okay? Believe it or not, I hated public speaking just like everybody else in this room because it's the thing that most people are afraid of. It's the number one fear is public speaking. And when God called me to ministry, I was like, I want to be passionate about telling people about Jesus, but there's no way I'm ever going to get on a platform where I'm going to grab a microphone, ever. And God said, but I've got something for you. And true story is I sat down and I said, God, you're going to have to help me. And if my wife were standing here, she would tell you, she would testify that I was awful. Not that I'm great now, but my wife would say he was awful. It just saying 3 sentences. It was nobody wanted to listen to what he had to say. I would stutter so bad. I'd get lost in my words, and my mouth would get so dry, and I just, it was just a mess. I was like, So what did I do? I said, God, if you've called me to that, then you've got to change that, because I've got something in me that I want to share. And I just want to say that God's going to give you a platform as well. It may not be holding a microphone, okay, because not every ministry position requires a microphone. But what it does is for you to let people know what's on the inside, and it should come out, and people can see it on the outside. Servant leaders serve. They see what others don't see. They envision a better tomorrow. They run to what others run from. They have a vibrant attitude, and they exude passion. So hopefully, moving forward, you'll those will be some traits that we see in you, and you let others see those as well. So in the next few minutes that we have together, I just want to kind of shift just a little bit to principles, to servant leadership. And the first thing I want us to see is this right here. Servant leaders humble themselves and wait for God to exalt them. Humble leaders. Servant leaders humble themselves and wait for God to exalt them. First Peter chapter 5-6, and you got the scripture reference there, says this. It says, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you. Servant leaders are humble, not being boastful or prideful, but take pride in how you serve, not that you served. I'm going to say that again. Not being boastful or prideful, take pride in how you serve and not that you served. Now, we've all met people before who were a little bit proud, of maybe something they've accomplished. Okay, you ever seen that person before? Maybe it was you when that one time at the science fair when you got that first place ribbon and you were so excited and you ran up down the halls and told everybody what you got. Okay, something like that. Yeah, I never did that, of course. I'm not. That's not a personal experience. Maybe that one time, but what we should take pride in is what we actually do, not in the fact that we did it. Which means I'm going to take pride in how I serve, which means I'm going to serve well. I'm going to take pride in the fact that I'm going to serve others well. A servant leader humbles themselves and wait for God to exalt them. I'm going to serve others well, but I'm not going to take pride in the fact that I served, which means if I tell somebody that I did something, you automatically lose points with God. Let's just be honest, okay? So if you tell somebody, did you see what I did? Or you look around to make sure somebody saw you do something kind for somebody, you automatically lose points. But servant leaders humble themselves and wait for God to exalt. 1 Peter 5:6. Next, what I want you to see is servant leaders follow Jesus rather than seek a position. Now, in Mark chapter 10, James and John, maybe you're familiar with the story, but James and John actually asked for a seat at the right hand of Jesus. So they're like, hey, Jesus, will you remember us? We would like a seat right next to you. Mark 10:43 says this, but it shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant. And whoever would be first among you must be slave to all. So when these two came to Jesus and wanted to be elevated, he reminded them that before you could ever be elevated, you got to be a servant. Because it's about a heart posture and not a platform. Servant leadership is about a heart posture and not a platform. There's a lot of people out there that are looking for platforms. There's a lot of people out there that are looking for somebody to listen to what they have to say. But a servant leader follows Jesus rather than seeks the position, okay? Now, I've met people before through the years, 20 years of vocational ministry, another 5 to 7 years of bivocational and different things. And I've had many people come and say, hey, I'd like to do what you do because they think that there's something about this position. And I said, well, I would just tell you this. If there's anything else you can do, go do that. Because if you're not called to this, it'll be the worst thing that you could ever do. Is people look at somebody like Pastor Ed up on the stage and say, man, that's awesome, okay? But Pastor Matt and I would tell you today, we spend a lot of time with Pastor Ed today. He's an amazing leader, okay? And I say this often to people, and I know Pastor Matt does as well, is At CBC, this is a job. Y'all didn't write that down. Maybe no. That it, you have to understand that it's not just about getting up on the stage and saying, "Hey, look at me and listen to what I got to say." There's a lot of things that goes on behind the scenes here. There's a lot of people, and I know many of you serve through the week and you get to see it too. There's a lot of things that's happening here to make sure that Sunday is an amazing experience that glorifies God. Okay? It'd be great if we just showed up on Sunday morning or Saturday afternoon and turned the lights on and all of that happened. And man, it would be awesome. But the thing about it is that's not what happened. There's a lot of things that's going on here. So what you have to understand is a servant leader is a following Jesus, not seeking a position. It's all about a heart posture and not about a platform. Be careful to what you aspire to do for Jesus one day. 2 disciples, James and John, said, we want to sit next to you. They were good guys, but they were aspiring for the wrong thing. Jesus said, you got to understand that if you want to be next to me, you got to be willing to serve first. Always check your heart posture. Next, servant leaders multiply the impact of their leadership by empowering others to lead. Servant leaders multiply the impact of their leadership by empowering others. One of my favorite passages of Scripture, it's actually one of my favorite stories in all of Scripture, is Acts chapter 1, verse 8. And in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, this is the last moments of Jesus here on earth. And here's Jesus, one of the single greatest leaders, if we would go ahead and say the single greatest leader in all of history, stands up and he's about to leave. He's about to transcend into heaven, and he's standing there and he's looking at these followers and he's like, what is the one message I'm going to tell them? Because I'm about to leave. And he looks at them and he empowers them to be leaders. And in Acts 1:8, he looks at them and says, you will be my